So for those of you who don't know, Senator Hyde Smith in Mississippi decided to let her feelings be known about what's going on, because for those of you who know, the Georgia GOP did in fact pass their voter suppression bill today, and they were having a discussion about voter suppression laws and whatnot, and what type of restrictions will be implemented.
We're talking about the church lady here.
So Miss Church Lady in Mississippi decided to say in front of the Senate committee that people should not be voting on Sundays because it's an affront to God.
It'll offend God.
That's nice. Well, for those of you who know what Souls to the Polls is a tradition in the Black community that dates back to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And it is very common practice that on Sunday after church, the Black community goes to the polls and vote. And so the only reason why Senator Hyde Smith would make a statement to the effect of it's an affront to God and I don't want you voting on Sunday, it's because the people who will be voting on Sunday will not be voting for her party. So naturally, they want to make it as difficult as possible in terms of being able to vote. And so, of course, the Georgia GOP passed a bill today that restricts voting access by not allowing you to vote by mail and put it in a drop box. Isn't that wonderful? Everyone has to have a voter ID. I'm not as against something like that, but it depends on to the extent of what type of ID we're talking about. Because in most instances, they want you to have a driver's license, and not everybody has one. And then finally, and this is the most egregious part of the bill, is you are not allowed to supply food to people waiting online to vote if they're there for a long period of time.
Starve the people.
What is this?
Starve the people.
How do you
wait?
come up
How
with
did we
this stuff?
get to that from not voting on Sunday because it'll offend God?
Because that's what was put in the bill, and it's like they're trying to defend what
voter suppression
the
is.
Old
what this is.
GOP, the McConnell, GOP is trying every which way to hang on to power. And the only way they can at this point is to stop people from voting. That's it. There's no other way, because they have not evolved, and they are so thoroughly corrupted by corporate money that they cannot convince people anymore that they're working for them, because they're not. You're always going to have people that are going to vote for them, but not enough where they could actually affect change, which is why if Trump doesn't run in 2024...
Okay, you're getting so way off topic, and I'd rather you not.
Okay, so I'm not going to get off topic.
No, can we
Jen's
seriously? No, I have to, because you're like pontificating. Okay, so
you can,
onward.
Yes. So the U.S. COVID response could have saved... I think they estimate about 200,000 lives.
It actually says it there.
300. Yes. So
you can read it.
U.S. fatalities could have stayed under 300,000. So what that means is 250,000 people could have survived COVID if we had a universal healthcare system in this country.
That's not what that was. No, what we're talking about here is that they spent on if they had spent on programs such as unemployment compensation and public health and those things.
If we had an emergency UBI where people would have been able to stay home.
But also, had they adopted widespread masks, social distancing, and testing protocols while awaiting the vaccine.
And never forget the worst
thing from the get-go.
The worst thing that happened in the Trump, there was a lot of bad things that happened in the Trump administration, but I think the most nefarious of them all was, if you remember, there was a deal, I think in April or May of last year, where the U.S. Postal Service was going to provide, I think, 5 masks per person.
Yeah, and he shut that down.
And they shut it down.
Yeah.
And think about how many people could probably lost their lives because they didn't have basic protections.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It was just bungled from the get-go.
How is Louis DeJoy still the head of the U.S. Postal Service?
I don't even.
Joe, you're going to do your job?
Well, they want to completely defund the Postal Service so that they can have all their private friends making all their money from doing something that should be a public service.
It's all about, how do we keep the people down?
Austerity.
But there is an opportunity coming up where we could turn it around. And our friend...
Okay, all right. You want to do this? All right. Wait, are you going to Alabama, Bernie?
I just want to let everybody know that tomorrow I am going to be in Alabama with the workers of Amazon in Bessemer. And they are planning to form a union. My understanding is that a lot of the young kids are not entirely sure if they should form a union. I know that they happen to like me a lot. So I'm going to talk to them and let them know that having a union gives you great bargaining power. And if you have great bargaining power, you could get better health care, you could get better pay, you could get better time off. and you could stick it to that son of a gun. I can't curse. Stick it to that son of a gun, Jeff Bezos.
I was going to ask you, what do you think of my graphic?
I think your graphic is lovely. It's really, really nice. I really appreciate you. You make me look good with a halo.
You have the halo.
I have a halo, and I must say that Jeff Bezos, he definitely reminds me of a very devilish type of person.
Oh yes,
so
he
I
is
totally
Dr.
am not. I am not going to support such a terrible, terrible guy. We are going to go down there, and we are going to convince the people that it is time to have a big union movement in this country.
Yeah, so everybody needs to know this is going on. So right now, the workers at Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama, are voting on whether or not to unionize that facility, and this is a huge deal. This will be one of the biggest steps forward in labor since before Reagan.
They are going to vote on Monday. I got to make sure that everyone understands that all of the threats that they are throwing at them, it is not going to work. They have to work together, and if they do, they form a union, and then a lot of people in Amazon all around the country are going to work together to do their own union. They're going to make their own union. It's going to happen. I know it. It's definitely going to happen. And I am confident that this movement towards a progressive future is not entirely lost.
Yes.
I know I'm not fighting as hard as people would like me to. With that said, we are going to do what we have to do, one step at a time. We form the union in Bessemer, and then it takes off.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're going down there. All right. So that's about Bernie and Bezos.
And then the final, very important that people understand. And I know that there are those, look, Steve Grumbine, great guest, amazing guest, really believes in MMT, and we do too. But he's not a big fan of UBI. I beg to differ because we have a story here out of Evanston, Illinois, where this is the first U.S. city that is going to pay reparations to Black residents. Essentially, they are going to be getting a UBI. And I believe that there's a community, for those of you in the chat, I believe that there is a community in, I want to say it's like Fresno, California, that's been experimenting as well with UBI, and it's been going very well. So
well, I mean, now you're sort of crossing over from, I mean, yes, it's a type of UBI, but it's a much broader issue that talk about that they're recognizing this through reparations. I think
100%.
that's the key thing here. It isn't so much that it's a UBI, you're kind of crossing issues. To me, the bigger issue is that they're acknowledging the need for reparations. Now, I've always, talked about this over the past few years this is, to me, we cannot go forward as a collective without recognizing the harm that we've done and repairing that as best we can. So hence reparations. And I think that it's sort of like to go forward without addressing that. And we could talk about the ways to address that. And I don't know that I feel that the cash payment is necessarily the best answer.
No,
exactly.
I think that investment in the community is the absolute best way to do it.
But here is what I do know, that decision needs to be made by Black people.
Yeah.
And what I know is that it is our white people's job to educate ourselves as to what our problems are that have led us to where we are. It's not a Black person's job to explain that to us, but I do believe it's within the purview of the Black community to determine what reparations look like and the best way to do that from going forward. We can't go back, so we got to go forward. So,
that's right. And that is a great saying.
I think it's very important.
That's a great saying from Andrew Yang, which is humanity forward. And that's what we have to do. And I like the idea of the term Florida forward. I think that sounds pretty sharp. So there's a lot of things that we could be doing here. But we need to repair what we've done.
Yes. And we're still, unfortunately, in Florida, we're still continuing to kick down here. So it's hard to even wrap our head around the idea of reparations. So the fact that there's another municipality in our same country that's starting to recognize the need to repair, and yet here we're still kicking down, it's just sad to me.
I think, well, and thank you, Blackberry. I'm not familiar with Sandy or Derek, but definitely we will look into that. We are looking to have.
Is John on here?
Yeah.
Okay, John, will
if
you
could look them up?
Yeah, look that up.
And obviously, we're looking to get Marianne Williamson to come on the podcast.
Marianne Williamson's policy about reparations was, I thought, the most thorough, very well. I really liked her concept. It's the same idea of what I'm talking about. I think she set it up it would be a council of 30 people that would be in the Black community and ranging and non-political. Like, this is not a partisan thing. This isn't people of Congress thing. This is
right.
a community leader and academic leader thing and come up with the plan based on how to use a very good chunk of money as an endowment for the Black community. And that's essentially what it needs to be. It needs to be like an endowment, and that could come in different forms.
Well, I always say that, when the banks invest in a community, they're not investing in the communities that desperately need the most help.
No, they're feeding their fat friends.
And that is the ultimate form of reparations, is putting the bank power, local community bank power, in the areas that need it the most. Yeah. And that is not something we're seeing right now.
No.
And we're going to keep harping on the fact that when you're down, it's very easy to stay down. We were building a community garden in one of the more plighted areas in South Broward, and the person who owned the property decided to cash in.
And there's something very shifty going on with the whole thing. There's something I looked at. There's something very shifty. But the point is that basically powers that be, I think, recognized that we were having progress that could possibly interfere with their plans for gentrifying that area.
Right.
And they weren't going to have it. And so somebody strong-armed somebody into something, and it isn't even just about the money. Something is going on there, and they're pulling the garden out from under us to gentrify that neighborhood.
And this is something that goes on all over the United States. This is not an isolated incident. Land developer money is one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue we have in Tallahassee, and that we have, just throughout the state, quite frankly.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.